I love tinkering, and I come by it honestly. There are lots of things I love about life in general that I find fascinating or that I've pursued on many different levels. For me, it always starts with curiosity or fascination, some sort of wonderment. I'm curious about how something works, if I can give it a try. And tinkering, it means so much to me because it's been my solution to feeling stuck, or feeling like I'm in a dead end or in a rut. It helps me out of feeling inadequate, or feeling like an imposter, or even worse, feeling like I don't belong, that I'm not meant for this thing or those experiences. Ian Coyle once told me that personal projects are the secret behind moving his career forward, and that's always stuck with me. In cases when I am growing, I almost always face some sort of challenge. I might feel overwhelmed or that I might not be able to do it. And sometimes I face those challenges, and other times I don't. But when I am brave enough to face them, sometimes I'm rewarded with frustration and disappointment. And in that moment, that disappointment can be devastating. But it's difficult to realize that these are just steps in the process. And tinkering has helped me see my way out to defeat those dragons that represent my fears and self-doubt, to lead me into the promised land of acquiring new skills and growing. And today, I'd like to share my process from getting stuck into gaining new skills. The following is a selection of conversations between myself and my good friend Geoff Barnes. We recorded these sessions over the course of several different days, and we discussed tinkering as a process and its practical applications, all wrapped up in kind of a warm blanket of conversational storytelling. I hope you enjoy.
Let's go. So you and I, Josh, we're talking today about tinkering, especially in the context of curiosity and how that can make a framework for lifelong growth, both personally and professionally. Now, you're a lifelong tinkerer. You've been working in technology for over 20 years, building tools and systems that help big brands as well as small organizations navigate digital workflows and data. That's a mouthful, but maybe we can rewind just a little bit, and I can say, what the heck is tinkering? What do you mean when you say tinkering, and how did tinkering come into your life in such a prominent way?
Tinkering has been my go-to for any time that I felt stuck, maybe in a job or maybe personally in life. Tinkering has been a way to kind of find uh, projects, personal interest projects that have allowed me growth. And then I get excited about that growth. I start making things and sharing it with other people. And then lo and behold, interesting new opportunities present themselves. Instead of me just waiting for the next cool thing to come at me, I'm sort of outstretching myself, offering myself up, and these new and interesting opportunities, which might be right for me, which might not be right for me, kind of start to present themselves as I navigate through the work that I'm doing, again, either personally or professionally.
Well, I think that this like tinkering is a childlike impulse, but obviously we don't all hang on to it through adulthood. And I wonder, if you recall a point where you crossed a threshold and had a conscious realization that like tinkering was not just to satisfy curiosity, but like was a tool, like that it came to be useful for you.
So it took its next form in middle school through music. We didn't have a whole lot of money growing up, and my parents, I wanted to play in music, and my parents had a flute, and I wanted to play sax. So they're like, if you stick with the flute for a year or two, and they're like, no way this kid will do that, then we'll get you a sax. And so I did. So then they ponied up and they got me a sax. But what happened is we weren't learning rudimentary things anymore. We were already 2 years beyond that. So I had to learn how to play the sax and transpose everything I learned from the flute, music notes, concert scales, all that sort of stuff, to a similar instrument, which is a woodwind. And in that moment, I realized that I didn't have to wait to learn. And again, I took two things that kind of were like one another, and I was able to kind of put them together. Well, let's fast forward now to I graduate from college. and it's time for me to get a job. And I put applications out there, and I went to school for animation. And there was a job that came up. My school said, "Hey, what do you know about the internet?" I'm like, "I'm on it all the time." They're like, "You should check out this job to be a web developer." I'm like, "That sounds awesome." So I read this book called Teach Yourself HTML in 24 Hours. I go to the interview. I don't lie to them. I tell them that that's not necessarily, my thing. And
When they say you're hired.
they did, yeah, because they love my sketchbook. They were looking for a creative person.
Yeah.
So I get hired because of my sketchbook. And as on the first day, I had to start building out websites. And so I start working with my manager and I start reading books and doing all sorts of things. And that's when that background and that curiosity really fueled me and saved me in that moment, because I could have just been like, that's too much. But there was a ton of tinkering at that time. And I was working for a startup. I didn't know it was a startup. To me, it was just a job that wasn't waiting tables.
Yeah. You gotta tell me how it is that they liked your sketch. They like your sketchbook.
Mhm.
They liked your drawings, and you're
Yeah.
on the internet, but you talked them into hiring you to be a web developer.
I
Like,
know.
I'm not sure I want to get in a persuasive target situation with you.
Well,
How did you
I'm
do that?
not, yeah, like I'm not like snake oil salesman or anything like that, but um, they were desperate. That's the situation. They were desperate. They had interviewed a bunch of other people. Some people didn't even show up. Some people didn't care. I cared. I was enthusiastic. I was ready to sweep floors if that's what it meant to get this job. And I think that they saw that enthusiasm and that passion, and they thought, his salary is basically like nothing. Let's just throw this kid a bone for a month and see what happens. And it turned out to be, a life-changing event for me. I
Yeah.
loved animation, but writing code and getting instant feedback was amazing.
Okay, so you talk them into it. They hire you.
Yep.
Day one, you get there. I know you read the book, but do you know what you're doing at that point?
No,
Like, are
no,
you ready
no,
for that job? Tell me
no.
then, did you eventually grow into that job?
I did. I came in early. I stayed late. I did all that sort of stuff, and I grew into it. I started getting uh, permission, if you will, to go on client meetings. And in those client meetings, I started to learn how to interact and talk with people in a solution driven way. And that was incredibly formative for everything that I'm doing now. So it was very much on the job learning, and there were a lot of bumps and tons of frustration. But I learned several languages in the 2 years that I did that, a year and a half that I did that.
So let's go back to that first job for a minute. So what happened? You learned web design, web development. You got capable as a developer. Then what?
That's where opportunity presents itself sometimes. And the next thing I jumped into was education. I had an opportunity at the Pittsburgh Technical Institute, which is now Pittsburgh Technical College. They had an opening for something that I studied in school. And I thought, oh man, that would be really cool to get kind of back into that. So I applied for the job. I got it. And on the very first day, they were like, hey, somebody is stepping out of a role. Didn't you say web development? And at that time, I thought that I was like leaving that world. And I said, yeah, I know how to do that. And then that just fueled even more. So then I was in a position where I had to train others. And having come from that being so fresh of being a novice, that helped me tremendously graduate them from being novices into web professionals as well. I did that for quite some time.
So that was teaching.
Yeah, that was teaching. Yeah.
I mean, not to belabor the obvious, but teaching is a completely different activity than programming.
Yeah, it is. Well, I mean, in one respect, you could say it's also programming. It's programming humans, But yeah, that was a turn on a dime kind of deal. Yeah.
So how did you learn to teach?
I failed a lot. They had resources at the college to kind of bring you along. And I just trusted my instincts, and my compass was, what did I want from my education? What was lacking? Where did those experiences fall short? And then what did I need in order to be prepared at the job that I had just left? And if I could answer those questions for them, then I thought that I could do okay. And that really helped to drive my approach. It helped to drive the curriculum that I wrote. And it worked out really well. I ended up getting like awards and stuff. Like it was crazy. It was a good time.
You must have had tons of imposter syndrome.
Oh yeah.
Because if your life is just, if your career story is basically talking your way into, like, fast talking your way into a string of jobs that you weren't at all qualified to do, and then learning how to do them, like, how do you, what's the imposter syndrome like for you? This has been, I feel like this has been a hot topic for the last like 10 years. People are actually like owning imposter syndrome, fessing up to it. What's it like for you?
It's really hard in the beginning because I want to do a good job, and fear of disappointment really drives me. So usually when I take on a position, the first 2 years, I almost shut out a lot of my other external activities, and I focus squarely on this particular task or this particular job. And I kind of put as much of my focus on that as possible because I feel so underqualified, because I feel like I don't belong. And I desperately want to signal that I should be there. Meanwhile, they hired me. So there's some level of something that they want there. And some of the biggest realizations that I came to is as I started to ascend on the projects that I was working on, I started to work on big projects for logos that people would recognize. And the code I was writing for that was really no different than the code that I was writing at the startup. I mean, yeah, like technology's changed, but like the approach was pretty similar. And when I started to realize that, I kind of got a little easier with imposter syndrome, because I felt like, well, I mean, this is something I do know how to do. But for the longest time, I really, really struggled with it hard. And I would only read computer manuals. I would spend all my free time just like consumed by whatever my work activities or my work responsibilities might be about.
You said something in one of our earlier conversations that I really liked. You talk about a job description as a syllabus. I think a lot of people tend to look at, I myself, you look at a job description and you say, well, these are the things I need to already have expertise in order to get this job. And job descriptions are dauntingly long and dense these days. You have to know how to be a programmer of every single kind of language and handle big, complicated data structures and be an interaction designer and have extensive experience with motion design. And by the way, be like a pixel perfect visual designer and play 4 instruments, right? Like there are these crazy long, just impossible, unattainable lists. And when you talked about viewing those as a syllabus rather than a list of requirements, I thought that was a really, a great and open way to view mobility in your job, the challenge of growing into something.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked at enough places, and it's not the same everywhere, but I have worked at enough places where a job description is more like a takeout order. They're like, we want somebody, we need a new person, and so like we need them to do this, and well, we're short over here and we're short over here, so if they could do all this, and then it turns into precisely what you're talking about, like one person that can execute on all this. But the reality is that like there isn't one person that can really do all that effectively, right? And so when it dawned on me that these things were just takeout orders, I started to approach them as a syllabus, just like you said, like, hey, these are things that I want to get into. I'm familiar with this one. I'm familiar with that one. I've always wanted to do that. This interests me. I have enthusiasm about that. That I have no idea what it is. And I'm just open and honest when I've ever interviewed about, whatever the respective job is. And I haven't gotten everything, but the things that I have gotten, there were many things on those lists that I didn't necessarily know how to do. And for me, I don't think I wanted a job where I knew how to do everything that was on the list, because I was looking to put myself in a position of growth, to try things out that were new, to get back to tinkering. And whenever I feel like I'm not learning and I'm not growing, that's when I know it's time for me to move on. And it doesn't necessarily mean a new job or a new employer per se. Sometimes there are things within your own company that are right there, and you don't have to wait for somebody to say, okay, we think you'd be a good match for that. Everybody's really busy. but you could take it upon yourself to maybe find some of that out. Like I was in a job at a medical technology company years and years and years and years ago, where I was a senior developer, and they didn't have a lot of work for me when I was there. And I asked my manager about it, and he's like, "Yeah, we just don't want to waste your time because you're like really smart." And I'm like, "I'm not really smart, but I can pitch in and help out." And they're like, "Well, why don't you just investigate and research some things for us?" And so I did, and then I got bored, so I started walking around the organization and just kind of like talking to people, and then seeing like what they were working on and offering to help out. And then I ended up getting to work on some awesome projects. And then I got recognized as being a go-getter, but meanwhile, I was just trying to fill my time in an important way for the company. I mean, they were paying me like I wanted to contribute to the organization. So that's another time where my curiosity helped to change my role and my job description than what it was from the original thing that I was hired for. And it became much better and much more rewarding as a result of it.
So far when we're talking about this career path and where self-starting and curiosity like played a critical role in bringing you like into your own, it sounds like it's a whole lot of self-confidence also. Like I haven't heard anything about a crisis of confidence yet, but when we were talking about this interview before today, you told me about the genesis of some of this, about maybe your first experience seeing something you didn't know. I think it was like that you and Rachel had bought a house and
Oh yeah,
a room that was missing, like, I don't
yeah.
know. And that
So
was marked by a completely different like crisis of confidence. And I'm interested in opening
yeah.
that second dimension to the unknown here.
So I mean, don't misinterpret that I wasn't unconfident, because I was unconfident, but I was also uh, and this might be wrong. I have to think about this. Maybe I was motivated by fear or motivated by disappointing people, and that's what kind of like helped to keep that adrenaline kind of going. But in reference to your story, Rachel and I got our house a long time ago. We were young when we got it, and time to do some renovations, right? And I had never done anything like that. Nothing physical, nothing like, I really didn't understand how that world worked. I was barely trying to get a grasp on this digital world where I could program and teach and do all those kinds of things. And one day in the office downstairs, she takes off the baseboard, and I lose my mind. I'd never seen anything like that. I thought the house was broken. I'd never seen.
Wait, now the house is broken, but your baseboards, you're talking about along the bottom
Yeah,
of the wall
around
where
the
the
perimeter of
floor
the room.
meets the wall, right? So what was going through your head when you saw that? Like what?
I I thought the house was broken. I thought we needed a new one. I thought I had to call a repair person because I had never seen exposed anything. Exposed
Okay.
wall, exposed floor. There's differentiation in paint colors from over the years from other renovations that had happened. And in retrospect, it's so silly because it's so trivial and very easy to to do a baseboard or not, or
Yeah.
to put trim, but that just kind of like knocked me off. And that's a part of this whole tinkering piece. Is there are moments where I get knocked on my butt and I get set back and I'm like, well, why do I feel that way? And how do I not feel that way? And what are the rules and the mechanisms for this particular world? And since that moment, we've refinished just about every room in this house. I've done all kinds of electricity, plumbing, fixing toilets, and all sorts of stuff like that. Like I'm fairly handy now. I do woodworking, build tables and furniture and all sorts of stuff. But the genesis of that was kind of getting knocked back in a whole world and rule sets that I had no experience with.
Yeah. So then what was step one climbing out of that pit of despair? Like you
Well,
thought the
first,
house was broken. Like, how did you get out of that?
I had great relationships. Luckily, my wife is amazing, and she's like, "It's no big deal. I'll show you. Like, this is how we can do it." And this is before YouTube was as prevalent as it is now. She's kind of stepped me through it, and I talked to my dad a little bit and other people, my friends that were more handy, and it was no big deal. So we did that room, and then the next time we did another room, we put a game plan together, and then we did that, and it came out even better. And then we just continued to step it up. We ripped up the carpets, refinished the hardwood floors, like stained them, like did the whole deal. Like we've done a lot of work in this particular house, and they future projects always started with a plan and like, these are the things we don't know about. We're going to research them and figure it out. But in that moment, I just wasn't ready for it. I just walked into the room and I'm like, we're doing construction. We're not construction people. We don't know how to do any of this. Like, we got to call somebody right now.
So you have a plan now when you have projects. Here's what we know we need. Here's what we don't know.
That's right.
How often is that list of things you don't know complete? Like,
oh, never. It's never, because you don't know what you don't know. Like during the pandemic, Rachel's had a dream for a while of building a tiny structure in our backyard for our daughter to have a playhouse. And so we put together with foam board, like a little mock-up of what we thought it might be. And it kind of came out that way. And then we just had to go for it. And we bought wood and we just started digging holes. Put the wood up, made the frame. We built a deck somehow miraculously, and it's pretty level. Then we put a structure on it and did the roofing for it. We did drip edge, like the whole deal, and it came out awesome. We put the slide on it. It's so many things that we had never done before. So I didn't even know what should go on I didn't know how to do list, but I felt confident because of my past experiences of being able to figure stuff out. We'd be able to do it, and we did.
So we're going to come back to process now. And because we've spent several occasions talking about this, and I've gotten to see you refine your own way of talking about tinkering, like it's striking me as we like sit down to revisit this, that you've kind of tinkered your way through this talk and this conversation. And it seems fitting then that like out of that comes hopefully like a conversation about process, about what does tinkering look like, just as a practice versus in theory or the fruits of its of your labor tinkering, etc.
Yeah. So there is a bit of a method to my madness, and you're right. It involves a lot of iteration. That's a pretty big part of it. But normally the origins come from a place of feeling stuck or stunted, maybe feeling held back, or maybe just lost, or oftentimes it might even come from getting knocked on my butt a little bit by being introduced to something that I wasn't aware of. Like sometimes you get typecast in a certain thing, like you're a programmer or you're a musician or whatever, and someone's like, oh, you didn't know about this? I thought this is what you do. And you're like, wait, what? And then all of a sudden, like now you got a whole new thing to kind of check out and investigate. That happens to me all the time. And so when that happens, when that spark happens, I normally do like a cursory wave of research a little bit where I just kind of seek out more information. My curious mind starts to take over. I see what kind of resources are available. And then I have to kind of evaluate like what's going on here. Like, is this something that's for me? Am I prepared to take it on? Do I have time for it? Would I be willing to make time for it? Because the funny thing is, and I think Merlin Mann talks about this, he doesn't like to set priorities because if they were priorities, they'd already be done. And like, that totally makes sense to me. That jives a lot with where I'm at, because the things that are important to me, I never have time for them, but I somehow find time to make progress on them or to get them accomplished. And then, is there some way I can toe dip in it? And basically the crux of it comes to like, what does progress look like? And I ask myself this one question: if I had to make progress on this today, not knowing all the things that I don't know, what might that look like? What would I do? What's one thing that I could do today to kind of move that forward? And whenever we were building that clubhouse, that was like the keystone that pushed us through, because we didn't know how to do most of it, but there was probably something that we could do today. We've got a couple of hours. Let's figure it out, But sometimes the doubt starts to seep in a little bit, and you start to question, like, I'm not qualified for this. I shouldn't even be doing it. What if somebody finds out that I'm doing this kind of stuff? It's not even really what I do. I'm a fraud.
If your first questions in the evaluation stage are like, is this something I can do? Am I prepared to do it? And the answers are almost always going to be no if you're a novice at something. Like, is it the toe dip that gets you over that hump? You confront the self-doubt, it seems to me, in the very early stage of this.
That's a great question. So for me, there's like a scale, and that scale is like my desire to know, my desire to experience it, or my availability of vulnerability. That's what kind of tips that scale. Like if my desire is greater than not knowing, then that normally gets me to that first step. And if there's another one of those, like, well, what's beyond that door? But there are some times where I hit dead ends and I don't go any further. But some mistakes that I've definitely made in the past, specifically in my 20s, is you don't have to wait around for an idea that's good enough for your time. You can make progress right now. You don't have to wait for that big idea, because sometimes working on the small, insignificant thing builds up to what that big, really super important idea might be. So you don't have to wait around for it. You can just go for it and make, incremental progress. So then after I evaluate and I go through all the loathing and self-doubt piece, and I'm like, I think this is something that I want to do more of, then I start to put together maybe a more formalized approach. So maybe I develop a mini little curriculum for myself. I do lots of experimentation. I read a lot, and I seek out experts, as many as I can find. And I watch tutorials and workshops and presentations and demonstrations, and I try to see any common patterns between the people that they consider to be experts and the people that they look up to, almost like investigating your favorite band and who your favorite bands, like who the favorite bands of your favorite bands are, in that kind of way. And almost always that starts to like converge into a similar set of experts that a lot of people start to recognize. And that's where you can kind of set your guide and your compass, and to follow some of those practices and seek them out and contact them directly. I've done that a bunch of times with, a lot of the different hobbies and things that I'm interested in.
So, okay, so far though, you've described nothing about doing. Like when does the doing start here?
So that happens sort of simultaneously while the plans are kind of in place. I start the execution. I start experimenting, and it kind of looks like a version of a Zelda board mixed with the movie The Groundhog Day. And so what I mean by that is that a Zelda board, when you first start off, there's all these black squares everywhere, and you have your one like in color, in focus square.
I'm glad you're doing this, because I don't know what a Zelda board is. I'm really glad
in the in focus square, you're like, this is what I know, and you venture out to this one over here, and that one starts to come into light. And then you venture out to this one over here. But along the way, the tinkering process, just like in Groundhog Day, you try some things out and you fail miserably, and you're like, reset, let's go back and start over. Okay, let's go back to the middle square where I know what I know, and I'm confident there, and I'm going to try a different path. And then reset, and I'm going to try another path, and I'm going to go there. And I ask myself these questions, like, did the thing that I wanted to do, did it work? Did it not work? Why did it not work? And what could I do that might be different? How could I change the outcome? Did I satisfy my curiousness? If I did, what was it? And if not, what am I still curious about? Or did it present more things for me to be curious about? Did I meet my goal? If not, well, then what could I do to try it again? Or if I did, what's the next goal? Like, what's the next thing I can go for? And I make a new plan and I revise, and it goes over and over and over again, similar to even just this outline that we're looking at right here. Like, I had my first idea and I'm like, that's pretty good. And then I thought about it and it didn't really meet my standards, really. So then I made some adjustments and I just continued to do that. And along the way, I get excited. I get excited about the thing that I'm doing. I get excited about my successes and my failures, and I start to share them with my friends, family, colleagues, or anybody who's willing to listen. And when that happens, some interesting things start to present themselves. I was speaking at a conference in Minnesota. Gosh, it must have been 10, maybe 12 years ago now. And it was doing a talk on Flash, because Flash was the thing then. That was the thing I was really into. And I did this like crazy experiment, and I was talking about it. And I went to the after party, and this guy was like, hey, the thing that you talked about today? And I was like, yeah. He's like, you should really just make it with this thing over here. And that thing was called processing. And I'm like, what is that? And they were doing a bunch of electronics and robotics and all sorts of stuff like that. And that completely knocked me on my butt. The spark started all over again. And then I went down this crazy rabbit hole of getting into processing and open frameworks and all sorts of things like that. And I would have never.
Remind me, I kind of remember when this was a thing, but I always like that memory's faded. And now I think like word processing or, it's been replaced by these more conventional, sorry.
Oh yeah.
Here, so I got to turn my heater back up. But remind me what processing was.
It's a length. Well, it's still
around. Is it still around? Do people?
Yeah, I don't know. It's more commonly used for like data visualizations and things like that now, but it's a Java-based language. And what's really super killer about it is that the compiler and the IDE are all in the same thing. And so you can just download it, open it right up, and very quickly, if you wanted to make like a box or a circle or a square or a game or whatever, you just like type out a couple of simple commands and it's just like ready to go. And you can plug things into it. It looks a lot like the IDE for Arduino. So there's a lot of similarities between the two of them, and you can get processing things to work for Arduinos or Raspberry Pis or all sorts of stuff like that. And that that world changed for me on that one day where I was sharing the thing that I was doing, and someone's like, "Hey, you do this? What? Do you don't know about this thing over here? Because you should totally get into that." And I'm like, "What? What is that?" And it changed my trajectory like pretty hard. And then I got really heavy into that sort of stuff, which in some ways we call some of that stuff, like when you get into the Raspberry Pi stuff, like Internet of Things. And I got into a little bit of that for a while as well. To kind of like wrap it all up with the process. So I first start off, there's the spark. I'm interested in something. I do my first wave of research. I evaluate whether it's something I want to do or not. And then I kind of put my plan together. I start the execution and the tinker loop, which kind of goes on forever because I get excited. I tell people about it. They introduce me to other things or ask me questions that I didn't think about originally. And then I go and I try that, and it just continues to go. And then eventually some weird things start to happen. There's this payoff. There's like growth. I acquire new skills. I acquire new talents that maybe I didn't recognize before. I get this association with these things that I'm doing because I'm telling people about them. So I accidentally become associated with electronics or music or woodworking or programming or whatever. And sometimes an opportunity presents itself. I get an email or a call or a text that says like, "Hey, I know that you're into this thing and maybe you're not the right person for it, but maybe you are, or maybe you know somebody because you're familiar with it. I have no experience with it. Can you help guide me into somebody that can help me with XYZ?" And in that moment, you may or may not be the right person to do it. Maybe you are, maybe you're not, but maybe you can help them on into something else. And that could then lead into further opportunities if you take that one, or a new passion or a new pursuit, or you pass on it. Like there's a lot of different directions that it can go, but there's definitely a payoff at the end of this cycle. And even in your day-to-day work, when I'm faced with computer programming challenges that I don't know how to do, which I have every single week, there's something on my docket every week that I'm like, I don't really know how to solve that right now. And so I just like put myself in the mind frame and get my tea together, and I like, okay, well, what's one thing if I had to do it right now, what would I do? And I'm like, okay, cool. What's the next thing? How can I move that forward? And did that do what I needed to do? It didn't. Okay, let's come back here. Like, I need to talk to somebody, or I need some perspective. Like maybe I got to go look something up. And I just continue to move and go until I meet my goal and I become satisfied. And then I hit it and I ship it off.
Do you do anything to celebrate? Like, do you have a bell that you ring?
No, but I have started doing habit apprenticeships or habit sharings. It's a new thing that I'm really into right now. And the idea is you take an established habit and you pair it with a new habit that you would like to get better at. And then those things become associated with one another. When you do this one thing, then you do the next thing. My big success right now is I'd let my work mail, like not my email, my physical mail pile up, and I need to file some things or answer stuff or do whatever with it. and I would let it pile up for months and months and months, and then I inevitably would have to deal with it. But anytime I do a pull request, which I do many pull requests throughout a week, I have to satisfy a piece of mail or two. And my box, I think it's empty right now.
Wow. What's that
Yeah.
called?
I don't know that it has a formal name, but you take an established habit and you join it with a not so established habit. So it can become established because there's something that you do all the time already. And then you just kind of like bring that other one along for the ride, like an apprentice or a like training. It's like a habit in training.
I don't know. I think I might have asked you this before to some extent, but I am curious, like, what is the next, what's the next thing that you're going to take on or that you're looking at right now, nervous about not knowing how to do, maybe need to learn how to do, et cetera? I know that there's probably like endless instances of those with the building project, but I wonder, like if you've identified something specific, like when you look out right now, and which one, and I guess most importantly to me, or most interestingly to me, is like, what's the most intimidating thing to you that you're currently looking at and figuring that you have to figure out how to take on?
The most intimidating thing. That's a solid question. There's like 15 answers to that question, and I can segment them into like life and work and hobbies and all sorts of things like that. But I think at work, we're due for new versions of the tooling that we've created. We've created some toolings and some automations and some software that we use all the time that has been our workhorse. And it works really, really well and gets us like where we need to go. But it's starting to age because, in the technology world, like we basically also work in fashion, and you have to stay up to date with some of the things that are going on. And there are some new tooling and procedure things that I'm excited to get into that I'm not really sure how to do it right now or today, but that's not uncommon. That's happened like, I don't know, n number of times throughout my career. So that's probably what I'm focused on there, mixed with a little bit of growth, specifically about building an apprenticeship program at the company that I work at. I very much want to do that.
What about personally?
Personally, it's a tie between woodworking and electronics. I'm strongly considering enrolling at the community college for an electronics class after I get vaccinated.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, like
why? What do you want to learn, or what do you want to do with that?
so through my tinkering, I've been able to make guitar pedals. I can follow kits. I can solder stuff together. I can even repair some things. But what I really want to know is how and why to manipulate the signal, specifically in audio applications, so that I could manipulate it in ways that benefit me when I'm making amplifiers or I'm making pedals or whatever. And right now, I make guesses, but I don't really know. So I've been studying like college level electronics engineering books and like doing all the math and like getting, up to date on all that sort of stuff so that I can make the right call, because a lot of it has to do with math. Like there's conversions that happen with the electrical signal that then changes into an audio signal, and you have to like handle that in the appropriate way. And I don't know how to do that right now, but I want to know how to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's pretty sweet. I want to know what you're doing with that.
Yeah, like I'm excited about it because again, like right now I just kind of like follow templates that other people have done, and I want to go beyond that. I can follow templates all day long. I can solder and put stuff together forever. But I have my own ideas about things, and I want to know why. Again, the curious mind. I want to know like why when I put a transistor here, why is that okay? Why does it do what it does here? And what about the capacitor? Like, what if I use a bigger one or a smaller one? Or what happens if I change the resistor? Like, these are the kinds of questions that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And then in woodworking, I'm completely captured by using tools that don't require electricity. I am just so romantically in love with this concept, and I don't know
So
why I can't get away from it. Oh yeah,
hand drill, right?
yep,
A plane, a
oh
hammer, you
yeah.
got saws. What else?
I've been so there's lots of stuff. I just got a hand grinder to sharpen my tools, so I'm restoring that right now. I picked that up off of eBay, and I'm working on building some record crates. And so far I've done everything with like panel saws. I've got a whole host of planes, joiner planes, four planes, triplanes, jack planes, doing all the edging, all that sort of stuff. I installed a bench stop in my bench the other day, like mortise and tenon style with just chisels and like, a mallet. Love it. Absolutely love it.
I bet that sounds so satisfying.
It is, especially because of what I do all day long. Like
Yeah.
it's not in the real world. Everything I do is virtual. Like being able to tangibly hold something and cut my hands
Yeah.
and make mistakes, like that's great. But that's been a long process. It's been like a 4 or 5 year journey just so that I can mill a piece of wood so that it's square.
Well, then, last, do you want to end by like, if you like, I think you may have some unique advice to offer to people who are feeling stuck or who are, a little intimidated to go for a job that looks like they're out of their reach.
Yeah,
You have any advice for people?
I do. I do. So if you're feeling stuck, you might not necessarily have to change your job per se. There might be opportunities within the organization that you're in, and follow your curiosities. Like talk, if there's something you're curious about or interested in, talk to somebody that does that. Find an expert that does what those things are, and then try it out yourself. Make something, tell your friends about it, show it around, communicate that these are things that you're doing. And there's a million platforms in which you can do that. And that might lead to an opportunity where someone says, hey, I know that you've been interested in Internet of Things. So like there's this role over here within the company and or at another place or whatever. Like you should go talk to them and see if that might be a good fit. And instead of looking at it as like, oh, I don't know how to do all this stuff, have open, candid conversations, because maybe at the time that that position's available, you're not ready for it. But you can get basically some prerequisite things that you can research and do and try out that maybe it's 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, or whatever, that it might be a much better fit for everyone. So that's what my recommendation is.
So just go for it. Just dig in.
Yeah, dig in, man, like, and try it and tell people about it, because that's where the opportunities are really going to come from. All of the stuff that I do is completely because of my relationships. All of it. Every single last bit of it.
This is great. Well, Josh, thanks a lot. This is fun.
Yeah.
Fun
Thank you.
conversation.